the last panel of our sustainability series for the Founder Institute. No one cares about your world-changing idea, and here is how to change that. My name is, and I'm assuming I'm starting right now. Wonderful. My name is Charlotte Connell. I'm the co-director of the Sydney chapter of the Founder Institute and their sustainability lead. So I am joined here tonight by an incredible panel, which I'll get into in just a second, but I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. And I understand this is a virtual meeting, but I grew up in Awabakal country, also known as Newcastle, and I now live and work in Gadigal land, known as Sydney. And I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the elders past, present, and those future leaders who are still emerging. So let's get straight into this. I will share my screen, hopefully. The Founder Institute's panel tonight consists of a stacked lineup. We have Sally Giblin, who is a founder alumni actually, and she's a sustainable fashion advocate and the founder or co-founder and CEO of Pure Bundle, which as a parent, you will really want to find out about this business idea of beautiful curated clothing packages, which solve the problem of the fashion waste. We also have Lockie Cook, who has achieved an incredible amount for his young 30 years on this planet. He's the founder of iYarn, which we'll get into actually and have a little demo of, a wellness app, but has also was named EY Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2015 and has actually co-founded quite a few organisations. And he's also an advisor of the Western Australian Land Council. He'll correct me on that later. Adam Long, who is the ethical CEO and founder of Conscious Step, as well as a legal advice app, which he'll also explain later. And I'm sorry, because I'm sharing my screen, I'm not reading your bios, but he advises, and he's really going to mix this up. And he actually came up with the idea of the title of this panel. He used to be a cat man, but now he's a dog man. You may even see his furry friends later. And we're also joined by Jodie Boylan, who is executive producer of The War on Waste, which was a revolutionary show. And I don't even need to go into what it was about because I'm sure every participant who's joined us tonight has seen it and actually catalyzed change in their life because of it. She's also the executive producer of the next installment, A Fight for Planet A, which comes out on Tuesday. I'm really excited about that. So I will see if I can, yes. And a quick thank you to our sponsors, UTS Startups, General Assembly and Spark Festival. Adam and myself and a few of the other panelists are grabbing a glass of wine. So I do encourage you to do that. It is happy hour. Ooh. Wonderful. I'm so techie. So a little bit about the Founder Institute and why we're here tonight. We're the largest pre-seed accelerator program, and because of that, we have some quite impressive figures of terms of where we're spread out across, how many mentors we have. We're joined by incredible mentors tonight on the panel. The alumni, including Sally, and have raised a lot of capital. Our vision in Australia is to make, well, for Sydney, and we've joined up with the other Australian chapters, is to make Australia the world leaders in sustainability innovation, which is why we're having a sustainability accelerator as part of the next cohort, which starts on August 18. We will be the first globally to do a sustainability accelerator. And I'm really excited about that because I feel like there's a lot of problems that need solutions. And this is why we're having these panels, to hopefully provoke and provocate some ideas. So I'm going to actually stop sharing now and go to Adam, our panelist, to find out, nobody cares or no one cares about your world-changing idea. Here's how to change that. Can we actually change that? Oh, and just before, please use the chat function for comments and discussion. But if you really do want a question answered by the panel, use the Q&A function. Thank you. So Adam,
hey everyone. So a reminder that this isn't television. I can't see you, but I know you can see me and the others. Look, dumb stuff in the chat. I'd love you to disagree with me, agree with me, tell me something better. One way or another, we're all going to learn something tonight. So nobody cares about your world-changing idea. We need to start with the reality that that is true. And it's true for two reasons. Now, I'm assuming that those of you who've joined the call are sitting somewhere in the sustainability space. Perhaps you've already started a social enterprise. Perhaps you're working in the nonprofit sphere. Perhaps you're just sitting with the gem of an idea and like, if only everybody did this, then everything would be amazing. And you know what? You're right. You're actually right. If everyone did that, that would be amazing. So why isn't everyone just doing it straight away? Two reasons. One, nobody knows who the hell you are. Everybody starts from a standing start, just being unknown by the world. And we're in an environment which, well, look, it hasn't changed. It's been saturated for a long time, but there are so many other people with other ideas out there trying to get it through to the same people you are. Now, if you think about Telstra's marketing budget, for example, they're spending, what, $2 million a week on advertising, trying to get into people's heads. You want to get your idea into people's heads. We're all competing with that. We're all competing with that commercially. The second thing is people are liars. I mean, not because they intend to be, but because we kind of ask the wrong question. And when it comes to things like buying ethical products, and we say, is ethics important in your purchasing decision? Yes, absolutely. Do you value fair trade coffee above non-fair trade? Yes, the answer usually is. Yet somehow non-fair trade coffee still exists and still kind of walks off the supermarket shelves. So why is that? Well, when we ask, do you value it or do you not? It's pretty simple binary. It's kind of like asking someone, are you a good person? Of course they're going to say yes. But when you take into account the rush to get the groceries done for the evening with the kids screaming in the car, it's kind of like habit counts for an awful lot. Price counts for an awful lot. Convenience, distribution, so many things sit well above the ethics of it. So although the people around you will tell you, amazing idea, that's going to light the world up, the reality is, I don't think we found Coney. Remember when everyone was looking for Coney? Yeah, I don't think that happened. I don't think the whales have been saved yet. That's been a big issue for a while. The rainforests are still getting cut down. And look, I'm not trying to depress everyone, but you know, in January, everyone was fired up going, we're going to save the bushland from next year's fires. Now who's talking about that? No one. We're talking about masks and viruses. And you know what? 3 months from now, there'll be something else. Well, yeah, hot topic at the moment, Black Lives Matter stands above the talk around COVID on any given day. So that's the bad news. Hopefully the other panelists will have a little more good news for you, but we need to acknowledge that from a standing start, people don't care that what you're doing is good just because it's good.
I'm going to jump in there, and I'm going to agree with you. And this is the reason why I'm is, can you hear me? Good. Yep. Yes, great. Is because I think people get stuck in their bubble. And that's what I found a lot. And it's like you with the idea are so focused on your one idea that you don't step out of your own comfort zone. You know, I think when you've got your idea, you know, I think talking from a perspective of where I come from, we talk a lot to people and we do a lot of listening. And I listen to people, experts, scientists, researchers, academics. We talk to people on the street. We get our information and we get our focus from talking to people and listening to people, and then kind of working out what is our audience and who are we, you know, marketing our idea to. So I've found, you know, people with ideas need to step out of their comfort zone and think big picture to get people to care. And the other thing is, you know, is your idea relatable? Is it inclusive? You know, is it accessible? They're the questions that we ask all the time to work out the why. Why should I care about this? So that's my 2 cents. I guess I'm supposed to disagree with you, Adam, but I kind of agree with you.
You don't have to. And for those of you who are jumping into the chat, just be aware, I've seen most of the comments so far have gone just to the panelists instead of to all attendees. So just note that there is a little option to send to all panelists, to all the panelists and attendees. And hey, if you've got an opinion, share it loud, make sure everyone can hear it.
Jodie, I'm really glad that you jumped in there, because I wanted to find out, I mean, war on waste did actually catalyze a lot of change. There was a study by UTS that said 452 high impact triggers were caused by war on waste. Big business, individual action. What was it in the end?
I was on the panel for that study.
Wonderful.
Just getting the initial stages of working out what we were going to focus on and who they should talk to. And, it's funny because a lot of the time I again pulled into these areas, and I've said to you before, it's not my expertise. I'm a storyteller, I'm a TV producer, but I find that I was connecting the dots with people and say, well, you should talk to this person, you should talk to that person. And that's what I go back to, is that I think people get so focused, they're in so much in their bubble, then they're kind of reaching out and kind of doing research and getting information and kind of establishing, how do I make this, an accessible, and how do I make people care about that? But sorry, yes. So yeah, I was part of that UTS study, which was really interesting. And I guess the answer to that is, is that we try to focus on things, as I said, that were, would resonate with an audience, and we use, obvious things like, once we figured out, the why we should care about this, we use things like, what is going to be the emotional tag? How do I make this personal to people? And then how do I represent this visually in a quick soundbite? And I think that's really important too. When you've got a great idea, you can get bogged down in the detail, and you kind of got to go back to, how can I tell this story in 2 minutes? Or actually for us, in the first 30 seconds. And if someone pressed mute, would I still get it? Would I be able to see the problem, and would I be able to understand the message they're trying to convey? So, in our, in what we do, we try and use, large, visual references to create an impact with the mute button on.
Yeah, I might jump in. I think those points, Jodie and Adam, I really do agree on. But one of the big things that comes up for me is in the sustainability debate with a certain products and consumer purchases. It's like, I see some people who live very privileged lives, and they're earning a good income. They are able to afford some of these sustainable products that are at a premium. But the reality is, how are we going to get the majority onto these consumable, sustainable products? And I think Sally would have some great ideas on that, and I'd really love to hear your experience. But for me personally, I look at 2 products there, and I'm not this uber wealthy person, and it's kind of like, and where is that tipping point, and finding that price point? And I think there's some really innovative companies out there I'm sure everyone's aware of. But for me personally, like a lot of that price point, it comes in some decisions. But if it's really that 40%, over that 40% price point, for me, I'm not really kind of getting around it. I can't justify it. I'm not wealthy enough. I don't know if that makes me a bad person or not, but maybe there should be a dialogue, does it or does it? I don't know. Sally, do you have something to share on that one?
I did actually want to throw to Sally, because where does sustainability fit on your customer value proposition? And exactly right. And, Lockie, you're speaking for all of us when price does actually matter. Particularly, we're encroaching on a big financial crisis globally here with the pandemic. So please do answer that question. So I want to throw mine in there as well. Thanks, Lockie.
Lockie, I think it's a really good point about the price component. And I think often when people are thinking sustainable, they immediately jump to, well, it's more sustainable new products that often, because those products are factoring in, fair wages across the supply chain, things like organic cotton, certain types of materials are more sustainable. Yes, they absolutely cost more. That is one way that you can be more sustainable, but there's also a whole bunch of other ways. And there's this thing called the hierarchy of needs. And basically it starts with, one of the most sustainable things you can do is just use what you've already got. And then you can actually, borrow things from a friend, you can swap stuff, you can buy pre-loved, and right at the top, it gets to buying new. So I think we also need to bring more into the conversation around different ways you can be sustainable. It doesn't always have to cost more. And I guess for me, the whole reason behind why I'm building Pure Bundle with my co-founder is because I really want to fight fashion waste. And I feel like with my experience, it's where I can really make a true impact and try and change the way that parents are dressing their kids through these pristine pre-loved capsules. But I guess that's my purpose. That's not necessarily how we actually communicate what we do. And because our solution is also a lot more affordable, a lot more convenient for parents, those are actually the things we lead for around, you know, great quality brands for less, rather than going for the sustainability angle first.
I think is what I'm just picking up on what you're saying, Sally. I think what you need to do probably in that situation is be quite authentic about the costs and all the principles, you know. So I think, you know, when you're saying, Lockie, about, you know, this versus this, and this costs more, so I'm going to buy this instead. If this was what you're trying to push, you know, I think if you're authentic about why the cost is more, but what that represents, and the chain of, I guess, of the product and how it got there, I think that really helps with, you know, people know that story. I think they will, you know, invest more in it. You know, they will, you know, they'll feel more positive about it. And I think that's what you've got to kind of focus on, is I'm going to feel more positive about buying this versus this, and kind of harness that, use that as, you know, helping in people's decision making.
There is actually
I think
a product.
Oh, sorry, Sally.
Sorry, there's an amazing. That camera's on you. Okay, there's an amazing product called Ocean Bottle, and it is actually £40 for this bottle, and it which is equivalent to 80 Australian. And basically it's made out of recycled materials, stainless steel, and for every bottle that you purchase, 1,000 plastic bottles are collected and prevented from going into the ocean. And one of the great things they do, to your point, Jodie, about the visuals, is on their website, one of the first things you see is 4 people with these enormous plastic bags pushing down and emptying 1,000 bottles onto the floor. And you can visually see the impact, and you know you're paying a whole lot more from that bottle than what you could get at many other places, but you can see the impact you're actually having.
Yeah, so it's about educating people, isn't it? And then, as you say, off the back of that, you know, talk to people about how they can reuse that bottle this many times, and the impact of that as well. So it is around, you know, crafting that message and around, I guess, the product or the idea or that you're trying to sell.
So, Jodie, I actually disagree with that point of view, because it's one that I've heard again and again from people going down the path of an ethical business or a social enterprise, this belief that if we tell the story, then people will get it and connect with that. And what I've seen is that it's true in very few cases that come to mind. So one is, Charlotte mentioned I'm the founder of a sock company. Here they are, socks. And each of the sock designs is partnered with a different charity. So one pair might plant 10 trees for every pair we sell, another might provide 3 meals for kids in refugee camps. There is ethics to the core of this business. We can charge more than your typical socks, but the reason for that is because the socks are mainly bought as gifts for other people. And the value of that story is the value it adds to the gift. Now, if we went into, say, the Woolworths and Coles market of socks that you pick off the shelf, nobody's actually going to really care about the effort we put into getting the fair trade certification, going and visiting all our suppliers, getting all the certifications to make sure there's no child labor anywhere along the way. It's just, I need socks, there's some socks. On the other hand, where Humanitix sits, so Humanitix is the charitable ticketing company that I'm the chief growth officer at. So
can I just jump in on that? Hang on, before you move on.
All right.
Whoa. That's exactly what I'm saying. You make people feel positive about buying it because they're buying for a gift. They know that it's going to a good, you know, it's going to a charity, it's helping someone, and therefore they feel good about that purchase. You've still created a story around that I'm buying into. Right.
So we've created value for a part of the market, which is people buying gifts for other people. And I think when Lockie said at the start, I'm comparing to this one's more expensive. Am I a bad person for not going with it? No, Lockie, you're not, because you're not actually getting 40% more value for 40% more price there. If you were giving it as a gift for someone else, well, how much do you spend on a gift? $50. All right, I'll buy $50 worth of socks because they've got a great story. So the counterexample,
marketing it really.
So the counterexample I just wanted to bring up. So Humanitix as a non-profit a charity that uses the booking fees on tickets to fund education programs. Here's an example where being a registered charity, there's no shareholders, everything that organization does is about closing the education gap. But it has to battle commercially with the Eventbrites of the world and other ticketing platforms. And when it comes to our hierarchy of messaging, well, the event organizers that choose whether to use our platform or not, firstly, they need to know with absolute certainty that they're getting as good or better features than they would get with another platform. And something Lockie said really made me go like that, because Lockie said, do I really want to pay more for something that's not as good as the other things? And there's such an expectation that ethical products, ethical services, that you have to accept a lower quality somehow just because there's a charitable component to it. And I mean, Humanitix has spent millions with the support of Google.org and the Atlassian Foundation to make the technology have features that other ticketing platforms don't have. But we have to start with, hey, this tech is better than tech you can get anywhere else. Oh, by the way, did you know that your booking fees are going to fund education for kids? And it's got to be in that order. It's, we are solving your problem better than anyone else. And Jesus, give yourself a high five. You're amazing for picking us.
So do you agree, like for the rest of the panel, in the hierarchy of sustainability and social environmental impacts, you can have a really strong purpose, as you said, Sally, but first and foremost, you have to have a really high quality, as good as, if not better than the rest, product. And sustainability comes down on your messaging hierarchy.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things is you have to be solving a customer problem, no matter what. It needs to be that you're targeting something. I mean, there's a great company called Olio, which is, you know, their purpose is all about fighting food waste. But actually what they do, because they're a peer-to-peer app of passing on and sharing food, for people that really quite desperately need access to food, they're able to quickly get that from their local community. And for a whole lot of businesses that have overstocks, and individuals too, there's an easy way to get it without that guilt of throwing it away. So they're solving problems for people, but the whole intent of it is sustainability. So I think no matter what you're doing in the whole sustainability space or impact space, you have to be solving a problem for someone and really finding and honing who that real target customer or customers are.
Thanks for that, Sarah. I might jump in there as well and just take it out of the product level this way to more of like the work that I do with the Kimberley Land Council. Over a number of years, I work with the Kimberley Land Council, and they got this fire abatement program. So essentially you're burning off an area of land, and then you're decreasing the number of carbon that gets put into the atmosphere if you're consistently burning every 12 months, as opposed to a huge catastrophic burn will come through every 4 to 10 years or something like that. So rather than just packaging up the carbon credits from the fire abatement, you also got social credits and then also biodiversity credits. So the biodiversity credits are all the additional fauna and flora advantages to burning off. But then you got social credits. So the social credits are also employment on country, addressing, creating jobs in an area where there usually isn't work. So you've got a bundle of it. And there, all of a sudden, you've got companies like Qantas. And when they're going onto the platform to buy, you know, when you're paying, oh, I'd like to cover off my carbon cost of this flight, that goes towards this product and funds for the rangers to do their carbon abatement and all that. So the idea is that this has created a market for social carbon credits, and they are able to market that at a premium price because you have this bundle. And it's such a great story for the consumers to listen to when you're on an airplane, to talk around the offset of the carbon. It's a really another great way that kind of talks around the story, which could create a sustainable business, you know, promoting social and, you know, and sustainability in the community.
Just on that, Lockie, it's so important. And I guess this panel, I really wanted to help tackle the problem of telling the right story and motivating your consumers, your customers, because Qantas, they have some great data, and we had Adrian Enright, who heads up their carbon offset marketing team. It's something like, and if Adrian's online, he can maybe help me out with the stats here, but it's something like 90% of frequent flyer Qantas customers say they want a carbon offset. but only around 40% actually do. And a lot of it has to do with they're not sure where that carbon offsetting their flights. They're not sure what story is behind that. And if they knew a compelling story like that, and they knew that, if they paid that $1.50 to offset their flight, if it went to something like that, I think that's a really powerful narrative. I mean, I don't know, what do you guys think? I mean, is it doing good only part of the job?
I'll jump in there. I'm glad you say that, because we featured that exact story in episode 2 of the series. So because
you know the stats.
Yes, I know the stats. And, we just, did a quick poll of people going to the airport to see what their thoughts about it. Do they know about it? Do they know what it means? Do they do it? Do they not do it? Why don't they do it? And quickly, that comes down to, messaging, doesn't it? It comes down to Qantas as an organisation, putting enough information out there, or doing some, targeted advertising and marketing around that element of what they do and what they offer, so that people understand what happens when they tick that box and where their money is going. And I think that they could probably maybe invest a bit more time in kind of visually telling that story, so that it encourages more people to do it.
Yeah, well, couldn't agree more. I was out on country with Adrian, who you're talking about, Charlotte, with Qantas. But you've also got these other companies, the major producers of carbon, Shell, ConocoPhillips, Impex. Impex have invested $15 million with a collaboration with the local Indigenous crew up in the Eastern Arnhem Land, doing the fire abatement program. But it's really capturing these stories, getting an amazing person like Jodie out there talking about, and creating it in a packageable way to people realize that it's going to bring the whole society forward. Like, wow, this is just all good for everyone. But there's not enough amazing storytellers like Jodie and Adam and Sally around, I reckon.
Well, Adam, how do you package up your doing good stories for each? I mean, you said each sock design marries up with a different charity. Attention spans are getting shorter. How do we tell compelling stories for this attention span deficit audience?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
getting into one of the tools that I think everybody on tonight's event should be applying to their own business is thinking, how can you turn something abstract into something actual? So the reality is, when you buy a sock with Conscious Step, say it's the one that supports Trees for the Future, is we immediately earmark some money in our accounting software. Sorry, this is at the point of manufacture. So every sock we design, we earmark some money in the accounting software, which then gets paid out on a monthly basis to our charity partners. They have expert horticulturalists, community managers, program managers in countries. The act of doing sustainable development requires huge expertise, deep understanding of local communities, which is not our strength. We're a sock company. That money needs to fund those, which result in the equivalent of 10 trees getting planted for every sock that sells. Now, the reality of the depth of intelligent, passionate people that put their effort into making that program real just doesn't fit on the front label of a sock. We need to get across, someone's online and comparing two socks, so they're standing in a shop. We've got maybe 2.5 seconds if we're lucky. Like, I'm so jealous of Jodie. She gets people to commit for 20 or so minutes to listen to her story. All the organizations I work with, we get a fraction of a second to pop up on somebody's Facebook feed or in their newsletter, and we have to make our story matter. So economy really matters. So the dollar handle approach, that when you do this, here is something very specific that happens, like 10 trees get planted, is a really good way for people to understand their impact.
Yeah, I'm very aware that I have the platform of television to tell stories, and that is, a huge benefit in this space. But what we do and in the building of the content of the series, and when we do the episodes and the stories of each episode, is we carefully look at what could be kind of snackable moments, and we build that into our kind of big storylines, and our into the big kind of structure of what will be the episodes. What are those going to be, those tiny sound bites that we can kind of lift out and share across lots of platforms, so that we do get eyeballs? Because a big part of we were joking about before, our audience is not necessarily people that switch on at 8:30 next Tuesday night. Little plug there. Everyone else is doing it. Is more the follow up to it. So it's the impact that it creates. It's people talking about it. You know, we don't have water coolers anymore because no one's in an office, but people sharing the extras that we include on, you know, on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter as well, but mostly the people that go to the iView because they've heard about the series and they watch it in their own time, in their own space, and that's what we care about. So, you know, in the building of you know, I mean, you talk about trying to, you know, explain a complex issue, you know, try and do a series about climate change. It's trying to explain the invisible or make the invisible visible to people and accessible and immediate, you know, and urgent and personal in a very, you know, it sounds like a long window, but an hour is quite short to get the complexities of such a huge topic and try and decide what people are going to be able to take on board and how do we inspire people without scaring them away and give them something new that they haven't heard before and all of those things. But yeah, so completely, I think we should talk, Adam, offline. I've got some ideas about socks. But yeah, I completely agree.
Sally, because sorry, go. Jodie.
Sorry. I guess it's in the planning, it's in the full planning of how you're going to market your idea and kind of get it off the page and get it in front of people is, you know, thinking about, you know, the big picture bits, the small bits, you know, every kind of avenue on how you get that, you know, attention and you get people to care about it.
And it's almost like I'm hearing, if you have a really great sustainability idea and maybe you don't have those storytelling skills, hook up with someone who does have those really good communication skills. Sally, I guess for you said you were inspired by the war on waste. So, you know, Jodie's series established the problem and you created a solution. How do you communicate that to parents? Because I'm thinking, you know, I mean, my kids wear a lot of hand-me-downs, but you know, you want your kid to look cute and especially for that Instagram shot. And it's a bonus that it's sustainable, right? Or is it, or are you taking customers on a journey?
So look, I think we definitely have a few different types of customers, and you know, we only launched a few months ago in London. I did this first in Sydney and then moved here a year ago. So we've only just relaunched here, and it is a different market. And we're still testing exactly what messaging resonates best here. But for the most part, it is all about, you know, for sleep deprived parents who are just like trying to crawl through the day with tiny children and young babies. They're there in lockdown. Life is just pretty crazy right now. Here's something just, you know, you get this capsule of clothes, arrives to your door. It's beautifully quality checked, you know, really affordable. There you go. It's done for you. That's the main way that people are coming to us. And then the sustainability is a nice thing, and we sort of bring a bit more in through the other parts of the experience as they go. But we do also have people that come to us more because of that whole drive towards sustainable fashion and because they have a much more of a depth of understanding around it. So I really think you need to meet people where they're at. And I know even on the weekend, you know, I was at this, you know, picnic that was going into the evening, and I was just completely in my own sort of mode of just having fun. And then someone asked me what I do. And I just rattled off a few words because I just thought, I don't really want to talk about this right now. So I said something about, I'm in sustainable fashion for kids. And because I didn't really put the effort into tailoring the message and thinking about who this person was, they were, you know, quite dismissive and, oh, that's really niche what you're doing. And if I think about it, you know, this guy was, he's in a tech startup. And, you know, what I probably should have done is tailored the message and, you know, you try and bring it around to people and talk about things that will resonate with them. So I think that's one of the biggest learnings I keep having. You use different messages and different ways of talking about what you do, depending on who your audience is.
I totally agree. I guess that would be obvious that I would apply the same kind of thing. But I try in those kind of situations, I kind of reverse it by asking them a question that I think will get them to engage in either my story or my idea or what I'm doing. You know, initially when I was saying to people, I'm making a TV show about rubbish, it was pretty much people would kind of get their drinks and walk away, you know. Like how dull. So then, you know, I would try and find some way of bringing them in. And I guess it's the way that, you know, that we go about making the show is find something that I think will bring them into the issue or include them. And I go back to saying inclusive, but include them in the issue or the problem or the idea or, you know, whatever. So sort of, you know, and then people talk about themselves and suddenly, you know, they'll find a way, you know, and I think that's kind of, you know, when you can kind of reflect, it seemed to work.
I wanted to throw to Lockie here because I guess, someone put this on the chat, is like, is the issue like getting people to care, converting people who don't, or capturing those that care but they're just not sure what to do with that care and desire to do good? Lockie, you created an app about basically helping people care. It's giving people a visual way of caring about their team or their community or their fellow people. Can you talk to us about is your mission to help getting people to care or just converting that into something visual?
I really like that question by Chris. I did see it come up. And the beauty of it is it's a really good question. So why do we want to, is our role to convert people to care or get people who already care and help them engage with the product? Obviously it comes down to what the product is, and it's actually a good question I'm actually asking right now. What I'm finding, because Ion is a very Ion app that I've created, and the pitch, what it is, Ion is an app that facilitates safe spaces for people to connect in on the areas of life that matter most. As a facilitator, a lot of people, I find, you have these heightened experience connecting in with loved ones, with friends at a footy club, maybe at a personal development retreat you did or something like that on holiday. You have this kind of woke experience, but then you go back to your normality of life, and then all of a sudden the hustle bustle of life catches up with you. But then how do you reconnect to that experience that you've had? And that's kind of, you know, what Ion does to kind of meet those two things. Everyone has an experience where they can connect in with the higher self. You know, higher self is probably not the right word, use of language. I'm talking about, like, for example, a bunch of guys on a footy club and they won the premiership and they've been on the piss for 2 days straight. What a great time, you know, and they're bonding together. You know, but how do we create
ayahuasca or something?
That is one way to do it. And but how do people hook back to that time when they felt super connected, and maybe, you know, in the morning they're having a yarn with their mate and they say they actually love them, or say about all these different things. So the idea of with this is, like, you know, a lot of in Australia, you've got a very kind of hard, stoic males who don't necessarily talk about emotions. So when I go up and say, well, you know, Ion's all about checking in the areas of life that matter most to you, and people are, oh mate, come on, let's have a beer. What happened with the footy scores in the weekend? You know, I think the vision, what I have, is converting a lot of these people, not converting, but bringing their awareness front of mind that they do want this connection with someone else, with themselves. But to market initially, it is a lot easier to just start off with people who are aligned with your thinking, get the adoption, get them to talk about the product, and then reach out to their community and do it. So that's kind of the way how we're doing it. Firstly, start off with the engaged audience who already get it, and then they end up being promoters. You get the virality, and then you kind of work on the second tier about getting people who aren't necessarily 100% aligned. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
No, and I've got some good comments here. I guess Ivan here said, wouldn't also be a matter of early adoption versus rest of the pack when it comes to telling the story? And I guess that's what you're saying in terms of reading the room. You know, there's going to always be the early adopters. How do we get the rest to come along on our journey? I do want to address a question that's come up, and I love the discussion that's going on in chat, but please, if you do want a specific question to be answered by the panel, do put it in the Q&A. So Danny has asked, how do you raise money for a sustainability product whose goals isn't to return massive profits, which is what investors are looking for, right? But to align global actions to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals?
On that one, given that I've been involved with that, I'll just throw my 2 cents in and I'll let the other guys go. But there's not all investors want a return on investment, a profitable return on investment, just to get clear on it. There's a lot of people out there who want the social return on investment. So if you talk about the social return on investment as though it's like a dollar figure, then people are more in line to not focus on the profit so much and more around the impact you're doing. So ION is a social enterprise, and that's how we've been able to get money from investors. I'll pass it to the other guys.
So, Lucky, what you've tapped into there is an entirely new method of valuing investment, which is very recent and also not very widespread. So one of the themes that I think is coming up here is really segmenting your audiences, whether it's the ones you need to reach now or later, whether it's early stage, late stage, and including with investors. Are they the investors that are already interested in this space, or are you going for another avenue? So Danny, if you're looking to do something that affects the numbers on the SDGs, but is not a business, then don't go to business investors. Look for grants and charitable donations for what you're doing. Now, as a useful case study, so Humanitix kind of sits in the middle of this. It's a charity. Its purpose is to close the education gap. It runs a commercial ticketing platform and runs that like a Silicon Valley startup. Now, we had Boston Consulting Group do some pro bono work for us, and they realized that when an organization like Google.org or Atlassian Foundation gave Humanitix $1 to spend on a ticketing platform, that would end up creating $40 in return to close the education gap. Now we're starting to talk numbers that investors understand and say, hey, you have a philanthropic budget this year, you were going to give away $1 million. If that goes to Humanitix, you'll actually have a $40 million impact instead of a $1 million impact. Are you interested in those kind of multiples? So it's an investor style conversation, but still in the philanthropic space. So just be conscious of who you're really trying to reach. If it's a business with a business return, go for your commercial investors. If it's purely social return, you're better off looking for government grants or philanthropic donations.
I think you helped answer Danny's second question, which was, where do I find these investors? And that's absolutely. We had our last panel was about profit versus purpose. Can you actually make more profit when you have a strong purpose, particularly aligned to sustainability goals? Jodie and Sally, what would you say about that?
I think probably Sally's better in line to talk about that, being a business owner and runner.
Sure. Look, I think it's probably very dependent on the business model and the particular space you're operating in. So I think, I think it's something that's very, very dependent. And, you know, if you're still doing something that is really quite scalable and has real potential, and you're going after a big addressable market, and, you know, it's something that customers are responding to and there's real potential for growth, you can absolutely be doing something sustainable that is also making a profit. But if your business model is much more towards the social enterprise, you know, more charitable end of the spectrum, and, you know, it's not as scalable, profit's going to be harder, I think it just really depends on the nature of the business.
So my advice to people starting an organization or considering one is, ask yourself, how do you bake in the impact that you have into your business model so it's not influenced by individuals? And what I mean by that is that ultimately everybody will follow the profit motive in a business. And you've got to think, if you're building an organization for the long term, it's not you, it's also your staff, it's other investors, it's other directors. Imagine the CEO 5 generations down the track that you're building for the long term. What decisions are they going to make? They're going to respond to the incentives built into the system. That's why publicly listed companies make decisions on a quarterly mindset. So the way for Conscious Step doing that was to earmark the donation at the point where we manufacture the socks, not sharing the profit after we sell them. Now, it's really, really important, because that means when we manufacture a pair of socks and we say this plants 10 trees, that money goes to that cause, regardless of whether we sell it at full price, half price, run a giveaway, send some to some celebrities. It separates the impact from the profit motive. Organizations do adapt. There was one I've been working with recently where they're looking at developing a plant-based food business, retail, and they're asking me, should we develop a tree planting program as part of what we're doing? Like, for every meal you get, plant a tree. And hey, I love the sound of that, but my advice to them commercially was no, because if they do well as a business and do well in switching people who'd otherwise have a meat dish to switch eating a plant-based dish, their impact on climate change, on animal ethics, on the amount of suffering in the world, that is phenomenal. And if they spend 10 cents from every meal planting a tree instead of doing that, I think that's a distraction. They can have a huge impact over here, and they just need to focus there. So what's your focus? How do you bake that into your model?
I totally agree. I totally agree with what Adam's saying in that space. Yeah. I think, you have to, what I was saying about people kind of, get focused and get in their bubble. I mean that kind of in, when you're trying to find who your audience is, but in another way, you need to stay focused on what your goal or what your product is and be concise about that, and not try and tick too many boxes, because then things can get lost. And I think, you better, I would much rather people being converted from red meat to a plant-based meal is much better for the climate than, and then putting more energy into getting that message across and why that's important, and money and profit. Yeah.
So it sounds like from the panel and the examples that everyone's giving that, Adam, that we possibly can make people to care, but we need compelling stories. But will consumers just go back to their old way of being? I mean, I worked in a sustainable seafood organization for a long time, and we'd always have these studies of, like the Qantas one, 90% of seafood consumers want seafood that has a great healthy impact on our oceans, but first of all, it's price and it's quality. So, I mean, can we change people? I just want to put that to the panel before we go into our top tips.
So the important question to ask is, who are you changing? Let's say you want to change the world for sustainable seafood. The whole world doesn't need to know about it, frankly. You're not going to reach them all. You're not going to compete with Telstra to try and reach them all. So the question to ask is, what's the minimum number of people you need to reach in order to reach your goals? As an example, in the seafood space, if you can pressure Coles or Woolworths into having a policy where they only purchase seafood that meets a minimum standard, boom, job done. You've reached 26 million Australians without having to talk to 26 million. So the world doesn't care about your idea. They also don't have to care about your idea. Your job is to ask upfront, what's the smallest group of people I really need to care about this now, and focus just on them. I mean, politicians know this. I almost never see a politician because they live in a safe seat for their party. They don't really need to go out and about. They're focusing on the swing voters that are out there. Likewise, if you're trying to convert people to your ideas, start with the swing voters, start with the ones easiest to convert, and keep working from there. Don't boil the ocean. Don't start with the hardest ones. Unless that's your focus, in which case, amazing. Focus just on the really hard ones to convert, because the world needs that too.
It's not in the questions, but I do like this from Alice. I guess in order to move people towards caring and action, we would need to go into the space into redefining values. But now and how? Lockie, I feel like, would you like to have a go?
I think this is I think it's completely correct. And the idea, the way how we do that is, as a community, how do we actually facilitate more of these conversations and talk about what really matters? We're so distracted with information. I had a call today, they're talking about mental health in Australia as a result of COVID, and young people aren't resilient. And I was like, I only finished school, I finished school, and Facebook was just getting introduced, and I didn't have social media at school. But kids have that now, and all these distractions going around there. And I think on a real macro level, and why I'm doing the work I'm doing, is that people need to stop to reflect and ask these exact questions. And then have these conversations. I think it's pretty simple to get around amazing people like who are on the panel and hear their ideas, and then also write down a journal. I think we're stealing, people are just so distracted in the society to think about the things and then actually hold true to that. I think we need to do that. And I think a lot of that work is, as a community, we all need to lean into that and be better mentors, fathers, mothers, siblings, whatever it is, to move these conversations and move the dial to be more value-based living as opposed to busyness living.
Adam, you mentioned that. I mean, you in your sort of open monologue that consumers are liars, but we're all up in arms during the bushfires when Australia was climate change ground zero. Then COVID happened, and I think there's been a spotlight on mental health more so than ever. And now Black Lives Matters, I see these as all sustainability issues, reducing inequalities, climate action. This is at the heart of, the Sustainable Development Goals and making sure that we live on a planet that's good for people, a planet and a thriving economy. And I'm sure I'm getting to a question here, but change in incentives, this is just some of the comments, and I do want to read them out so that the panel can address them. But change and incentives are closely related, but would it also depend on the level of conformism of the audience you are targeting? And I guess we're all talking about that. You have to know your audience. So maybe with the time we have left, I'd love for the panel to go around with their top 3 tips on how do we make people care? How do we get our product, our idea off the ground and get people to pay attention? Sally, I'll start with you and I'll go across.
Yeah, sure. So look, I
think your top 3 tips.
Top 3, all right. First tip I would have is to emphasize the value for them. I think no matter what, and we keep talking about it, you need to think about what is in it for them over and above sustainability, impact, those sorts of things, just making sure that it fits their problems, what they need. I think the second thing is making it visual and something that they can instantly, try and understand or relate to, like the story I told earlier about Ocean Bottle, just something that can make people understand the true impact of what they're doing fast. And I think the third thing would be being passionate about what you're doing, because no matter what, whether you're building a business that's all about for profit, whether you're building a business that has impact as well, you need to love what you're doing. And if you're constantly going to be trying to spread the word, convert customers, investors, stakeholders, all sorts of people, you have to be passionate about it and want to keep telling those stories and putting it out there, because that will give you the longevity.
Thank you, Jodie. I mean, you are the expert communicator here. You have revolutionized how we think about waste, and soon how we think about climate action. I'm really excited about what changes will happen. What are your top 3 tips in terms of communicating effectively?
Well, I was going to respond to, if you don't mind, that thought about that people care, but they don't know what to do about it. And that's kind of how we've approached War on Waste and also Fight for Planet A. And I think that's what we've seen this year when we're talking about bushfires and we're talking about COVID and Black Lives Matters, that people do care, but then they just don't know what to do next. So I was sort of think what I'd like to give was with like 3 tips on how you can take that care and kind of maybe put it into action. And I think it kind of comes down to 3 things. And it's probably about using your time to influence your sphere just outside of your home. So within kind of your community, within your friendship circles, within your schools, within your corporations or workplace, and using your voice to joining others who are advocating, and then probably and not shying away from this is using your money on who you invest with, where you spend it, the choices that you make, where you bank, where you super, the energy provider that you use, the way that you set up your home, the products that you buy. I think they're probably my kind of 3 things that I would kind of like to share, that I think, is taking that, fact that people do care, but it's just like, so what do we do next? And how do we put that care into action?
And I think it has to be quite fast, doesn't it? Presenting the problem and straight away, here's the solution.
Yeah, I think you have to be ready to kind of step up, really, and that's what I was sort of saying about using your voice and advocating and joining people that are advocating, and being kind of realistic about what you can achieve in your world as well. But I think when people care, they just don't know how to turn that care into some kind of forward action or progress.
Adam, I'll get to your comment, Danny, later in the chat. Adam, what are your top 3 tips on for sustainability founders, or founders who have an idea and they want it to have a good social environmental impact?
Yeah, sure. So the underpinning idea that I want everyone to take away is, just because your idea is ethical or meaningful doesn't mean people will care about it. Start with the assumption that they don't, and they won't. Even though everyone you told it to said, wow, that's so good, I'd totally buy that. They won't. They're liars. They're liars. So what actually motivates people is what you need to dive into: the science of purchasing, of decision-making, behavioral economics. There was a comment in the chat there earlier about the value of conformism. Yeah, that's a major, major driver of why people do what they do. And I'm just loving this connection. Jodie's doing the war on waste and the idea of conformism in war. When the military analysts look at why soldiers fight, they're not doing it for patriotism. They're not doing it for values of freedom or whatever the political view is at the time. They're doing it for the love of the community around them, as in the guy on their left and the guy on the right, not screwing up for them. And that, I mean, Germany understood it well enough. They would hold back entire groups of people from the front lines while waiting for someone's brother to arrive, because that made the difference between the passion with which people went into their own war, whether that's World War II or a war on waste or a war on unsustainable seafood. The same thing matters when you can bring people together. That is one tool of many that the commercial types have figured out, and you need to figure out as well to make this work. The other thing the commercial types have figured out, and you need to as well, is not trying to affect everybody. So Danny's comment there about how do you convince people about climate change before you sell the idea to them? Well, I've kind of been doing that for what, like 40 years now? Like, at what point do you say, okay, we don't need to convince everyone? What's the minimum number of people we need to reach to actually get these goals across the line? And I think the superannuation space has been such a good example of that, where the percentage of people who have switched into a sustainable, environmentally friendly superannuation fund is actually very low, single-digit percentage numbers. But because so few people ever change superannuation fund in their lifetime, that couple of percent is enough for every single fund to go, oh my gosh, we've got to jump on top of this and offer one as well. And that made massive change with just a few people making it. So don't try and reach everyone. Who do you need to monopolize first? Get 100% of a small group of people rather than one message out once to a small group of people. We don't make change by letting them hear about your idea once. You make change by making them hear about it again and again and again. I mean, even with War of Waste, like as Jodie was saying, the effort they put into the sound bites, the snippets, the trailers, the posters, the upfront marketing, you hear the messages kind of 20 or 30 times before the show, and then the show's designed to get people talking about it 20 or 30 times afterwards as well. So remembering that that's what it takes to get people to change their behavior, huge repetition of messaging, the tools that the commercial types use, and focusing on smaller groups of people rather than trying to reach everyone. Good luck, you lovely people.
And as Adam was saying, just jumping in there, and you've got to keep your message, I guess, concise, really clear and concise. You know, it needs to be really direct and, you know, as I said, really accessible, and so that people, you know, really can kind of jump on board and capture what you're trying to say in a very short snippet, soundbite.
That you can tweet or TikTok now. Lockie, you've got a social enterprise. So what are the top 3 tips for you in terms of getting people to care about your world-changing idea?
It really echoes everyone else. You know, I'm just real simple. It's about creating activations for your nuanced niche community, enrolling them, and getting them to understand the value proposition, and getting them to also give you feedback. Because if you launch a product but not also open to that feedback, you know, you're still caught up in your little bubble, what Jodie was saying. So also be open to that feedback. Follow up, that repetition, what Adam's saying, and then support. Be there to support, because, you know, and this is the beauty in Australia. I know we got a global audience here in South East in the UK, but the beauty of Australia, if you've got a product that truly can have a, you know, global impact, Australia is the best place in the planet to really test out a product. We've got enough of a population. So really see and use this as a bit of a place to get that feedback, nail the messages, and then nail the product. So then it really can be a world-changing initiative.
Thank you so much. We have some great comments coming through on the chat line, which were comments as well as questions. We are out of time. Phoebe and myself, who's my other Sydney chapter co-director, can be available afterwards for a bit of a bonus couple of minutes or 10 minutes to answer any questions about the Founder Institute. Thank you so much for your time and effort. I will have this available on YouTube, and I'll also sort of synthesize what we've been talking about. And I know we want to have a lively discussion and debate, but I guess we're all on the same page here. It sounds like we really, doing good is great, but you need to have compelling narrative. You've got to have effective communication behind that, and you really need to know your audience. I think that's just basic marketing 101, really. Doing good isn't enough. Having a social and environmental impact isn't enough. You have to have a good story and a good quality product behind it. Thank you so much for your time and your effort. These are your mentors for the Sustainability Accelerator that's coming up with the Founder Institute. We start on August the 18th, so it's pretty soon. And if you do have any questions, please stick around. But otherwise, thank you so much. Tune in next Tuesday. Download the Yap. Get a pure bundle for your friends that have little babies. And Adam, get some socks. And for your next event, please use Humanitix. It's a really great platform. It's very easy to use. And I hate to say it, but it's basically exactly like Eventbrite. So if you look at like for like, but it has a good impact, I'm going for it. So thank you so much, panelists. And stick around if you want to, attendees, to ask some questions of Phoebe. And Phoebe, you can even put yourself on the camera so we can see you.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just chatting to one of our audience here, Linda Doon. If you are still on the line, you've asked a couple questions about our upcoming program. Well, even though I couldn't really tell the details of your startup. Yeah, hi Linda. I'm just about to
So I should make a note that panelists, you'll have to use the chat or the Q&A function to not panelists, sorry, attendees, because with the webinar platform on Zoom, only panelists are on board. So, and thank you, Lockie, Adam, Jodie, and Sally. You can, of course, stay on. And even Sally, you've been through the course, so you could answer more questions than most. But thank you so much for your time. You guys are welcome to hang around, or you can go have a wine now, or dinner, or relax. And
I'm still on coffee. It's only 10:30 here.
Oh.
I'm
on the wines already.
So great, guys. Thanks a lot. Great dialogue. Great chat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for including me. I really appreciate it.
Jodie,
thank you, Jodie.
Come on, my gosh, you took very complex ideas, and I'm so excited to see what you've done with A Fight for Planet A, because climate change is really hard to describe effectively, entertainingly, informatively, and provoke action, which you will. So really looking forward to it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's such a huge topic. As I said, it's hard to do it in such a small amount of time, but we hope that we'll give the audience some great ideas about how they reduce their carbon footprint. And I guess what is their carbon footprint and what does that mean is really important, and that's part of the messaging. And
I also saw that Good for the Hood has partnered with ABC for a toolkit. So if anyone's going to watch Fight for Planet A, which I'm sure you will, check out Good for the Hood. Has a toolkit of action that you can take straight away, tangible action that you can help with your climate action steps.
There's some really great initiatives that you can find on the ABC website if you go to Fight for Planet A. There's a community action toolkit as well as an at-home toolkit. We also partner with a group that have just devised an app that kids can use in schools. It's called Climate Clever. So there's sort of something for everyone there, community, schools, home. So we hope that that's going to help people just have some answers, because I think people are just yes, I care about climate change, but I have no idea what do I do next. How do I help this massive problem that I can't see, but I know that's going to is already impacting my present day, and is going to impact my future and the future of my family as well. So
I think really
we get all that across.
No, you did such a great job. And I know Adam brought that up, that I've just completed that Climate Reality Leadership Program, and I implore everyone to go do that as well. It's free, it's online. Al Gore presents it. Oh, Adam, you're back. And Adam, you mentioned, everyone cares about Black Lives Matters now, but actually what's really compelling, the evidence is that people of color are and minority groups are disproportionately affected by climate change. So it's all connected. It's not, one or the other. I mean, we tend to separate things, segment them because it's easier for us, but actually it's all connected. Climate change impacts minority groups more than everyone. So it's a huge issue. So I can see there's still quite a few participants on board. So if you have questions, please bring them on. Phoebe, you're doing a great job of answering.